Cheers.
Cheers. Welcome back, guys. Let's tell you about how our week was. You want to start?
The week was something. The week was something. So after the day after we recorded this last podcast, we got a little note on our door that our rent's going up, and not even by a little bit, by like a lot of it. So that's been interesting. They're like, hey, by the way, you've got 90 days.
No,
Figure
not
it out.
even. Not even.
Not even, yeah.
It's like just over 2 months until we have to move out of here. And we found out like it's going to go up several $100s more minimum.
Oh, for real though. It's crazy.
So we've been spending our entire week looking at places to live. We've been spending our entire week looking at where we want to be and what's manageable. And we thought we found the perfect place. And turns out they have terrible reviews. So we're not going to be living there.
At least we had the foresight to look at reviews.
True. There weren't a lot of reviews when we moved into the place we live in now because it was brand new when we moved into it.
And it was much better back then, too.
True. It was under a different management company, so things were different. Things have been a little stressful for us between episodes. And we thought it was the perfect time to bring up one of the most common stressors that couples face and kind of how we've tackled it in our relationship, which is finances.
Finance is tough. It's a tough subject to even really talk about, too, because it's extremely important, but it's difficult because in the time you're sitting there stressing out yourself, right?
Sure.
Everybody is feeling the pressure, and being able to communicate about it is it's a challenge.
I think a lot of couples don't like talking about finances because it's uncomfortable when you are not in a place where your finances are where they want them to be. Or where you want them to be is what I should say.
Yeah.
And so, as a couple who has faced multiple seasons of life of finances being a stressor, we wanted to kind of touch base on this. And, last week we talked about love languages in the last episode, and we wanted to focus on some of the stressors that impact communication styles between couples and impact their connection. And finances has been one that we have seen a lot impacting us just because of things that we've faced. And I think it's important that we touch on it because the majority of the things that are issues for couples are outside stressors. It's not necessarily,
It's not just finances either. It's a lot of different things.
Sure, and it's a lot of stuff that's outside of you guys. It's not, stress here. It's stress outward coming to both of us.
But it's real easy to express your frustration or your stress towards the other person and vice versa, and it be mistaken for like, hey, I'm getting mad at you, but really I'm just getting mad towards you.
In your direction.
Right? Like
because
we're stressed, right?
I think it's easy to let an outside force come in between you when really it should be you against the problem. It's easy to let the problem be you against each other.
Yeah.
And I think some of the things we're going to talk about will hopefully help other people who have gone through times like we have or will go through times like we have to face that and think of things that they could do to prevent it from being stressful. Because like we said last week, we are by no means perfect,
I am. Speak for yourself.
There
Come on now.
There are plenty of times that we have gone through stressful situations where we have not gotten along every single day, and
it's been tough.
It's been tough.
It's been a tough ride.
It's because there's a lot of things that put strain, So I think, one of the things we kind of wanted to talk about first was a little bit of, some of the tools that we have used that have helped us. And I think you could maybe speak to a little bit better than I can, kind of the concept that you started for us that you always wanted to be in your long-term relationship. That is your forever, that the concept of money being ours versus
not mine or yours.
Sure.
Right. And that's one thing, like, I noticed growing up is that it was always like, oh, it's my money, this, that, I work, you stay home, and there's, whatever the case may be, it's always been my money. And I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all. Because it's not just my money, it's our money. It goes in the same bank account. We share a bank account, and we know a lot of you guys do as well. Later on in life, it makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't you, right?
Yeah, especially with the fees of sending money back and forth in different apps and stuff like that these days. It's irresponsible not to almost.
Really, though.
But I think, one of the things we had to come up with as a young couple that was starting out, and I mean, it's not like we're old now. We're older, but we're still young.
Who are you?
But I think one of the things we had to think about was, how do we want to structure our finances and those things, because like when we first met and started dating, I had my own place that I was renting. You had your own expenses. We both had our own expenses in other places, right? So like I had rent and the electricity and all those things at the house that I was living in, and you had your bills that you had for storage and everything else, the car payment and everything.
Yeah, I went through a change of not so much a career change. We ended up moving in with my father about a year before we met. It cut down, rent, bills, things like that. It cut down expenses a lot, so that way I could afford to try to change careers and see how that went.
And the cool thing for us...
Not well, that's the answer, if anybody was wondering. Not well. I took advice from the wrong people, and I was like, let's try it. And, so I was trying to get into sales and all that, and I say try to get in. I was trying to break away and move to different avenues of sales, right? Every place has a different pay structure, and it apparently, like, if you're not like top tier, you don't really make too much. But not only that, but with different pay structures, there was a place that I did work at where they had like 5 points, right? So you had to be on the phone for a certain amount of hours, you had to reach out to a certain number of people, you had to see a certain number of customers, you had to generate a certain amount of leads, and you had to hit a front and back revenue base. And if you don't hit all 5, you don't get any commission. And that's for the month. So I sold, in the sales realm, it was a lot. I sold about $250,000 worth of product. I was like, okay, it's a decent thing. Basically 23 sales, and net gross should have been a heck of a lot higher than it was. Ended up getting screwed and didn't even make minimum wage for that entire month. So that was rough. Ended up working, I think that whole time, like 500 hours and some change that month. Like, it was insane. I never slept, and I was like, forget about this place. I'm leaving. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
But that was a stressor for me, at that point. So
Absolutely.
I had just switched to another career pretty much when we met. I was there for, a month?
Something like that, yeah.
Maybe a month and a half, 2 months. So anyway, that was a huge factor.
But I think, when we first started dating, we had finances that were in completely different places because he had credit cards and savings. I did not. I was, at this point, just about a year out of college, so I had student loans. I did not have a credit card other than the one that I only bought flights on to fly back and forth to visit my family and paid them off every single month. So I had some credit, but it was a very small credit card. And I had no savings. It was basically my job paid my bills, and I was lucky if I had money left over. And I was renting a house by myself at the time, so I was paying all the utilities and all the bills there, car payment. I was lucky that my parents were helping me with my phone bill at the time, since I was just out of college, and it was a very minimal cost in comparison to other bills. But absolutely, it was tough. So we each had very different financial situations. He had those savings and he had, credit, and I didn't.
Luckily I did. But really what I was getting at with that story was the segue into us moving here. Right? So everybody, knows our origin story. We moved in together about 2 weeks after we met. And then probably, about 6 months, we moved to Florida. Right? About 6 months?
Not even, I don't think, but...
4 months? 6 months?
Let's see.
Between 4 and 6?
About 5.
5?
Yeah.
But I had accepted a job offer down here, and it was a great job offer. I was like, all right, cool, let's go ahead and take it. We found our place. We moved in. That job was no longer available. So we moved down here, and we had zero income at that point. And we was like, okay, now what do we do?
Right.
And for several months, it was driving Uber and selling things on a Facebook Marketplace and taking just random, odds and end type jobs for a while, quite some time, unfortunately.
It was 2 full months. So when we moved down here, it was the end of October of 2017. We both got a job about a week or two before Thanksgiving at a place that was awful and ended up not continuing. We drove Uber pretty much every day between both of our cars to make ends meet, sold stuff on Facebook Marketplace, like he said. I accepted a job December 12th and didn't start until January 5th. So we moved here Halloween and worked for about a month and a half before I got my job offer. But because the company I was going to be working at was closed for the holidays, they weren't having me start until they came back from Christmas break. So it meant that through that Christmas season, there was no income other than us doing Uber and things like that. So basically, before we moved out of Georgia to Florida, I had a job working for the state government. He had a job as well, and we moved down
Was in
here
sales.
for his job.
As you know.
And I was kind of going to be taking a break, having worked in a very difficult field, to try to figure out, number one, what I wanted to do, and number two, kind of just take some time for myself. I had worked about 14 months in a job where I did like 8 checks worth of overtime, which is a lot. So
Yeah.
it was going to be a reset. So we weren't planning on me having a job right away when we moved here, which is part of what impacted this first time that we went through that was
Yeah.
a struggle.
I mean, pretty much immediately it got to the point where, we had to choose between eating dinner or keeping the lights on.
Yeah.
And it was like that for a while. We reached out for help to some of my family members who, unfortunately, at the time couldn't help. And
some of mine couldn't help either.
Same with that.
you
And
know.
it's just like, okay, what do we do? So extra long hours on Uber and whatnot. And even when she started her job, her first couple of checks weren't really much. And then the commute on top of it, you had tolls and gas. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
now I got to find something. And our financial struggle probably continued, I would say, for a year.
About a year, yeah.
After I was moving here.
You tried a handful of different jobs that ended up not being the right fit, and just weren't going to pay enough.
A lot of scams and BS jobs that are down here, and I never really came across that before, which was weird. But
Yeah.
it was like when you see it, you're like, now I get it.
A lot of jobs that were just too far away to be commission based, or the timing wasn't working with everything. It was a struggle.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that one company I got a job with, doing like water treatment type stuff. And it was a sales job, so I was like, okay, this is going to be easy. They're like, yeah, every sale you make, your commission's going to be like $1,700. And I was like, wow, that seems too good to be true.
Yeah.
How many leads am I getting? Like 2 a week, maybe 1 a week? Like, what's the gig? And like, oh, you'll probably get like 3 or 4 a day. I'm like, there's no shot that the commission is that way. And I was right. I was very, very right. I think I made in the month that I was there, about $300,
Something like that.
and I wasted about $400 in gas.
Yeah.
So
Definitely so. We had a lot of jobs that didn't work out to be the right fit. I took a job just because it was something that was steady. I was making less than where I was in Georgia, which is crazy to think about, when I started, because I was working for a nonprofit and there was no money in it. But it was something. It was
something.
It meant that we knew we could pay most of the essentials.
Yeah.
At this point, we had, about a year in, pretty much maxed out. We opened an additional credit card, maxed out 2 credit cards, had credit cards in collections because we couldn't afford the credit card bills. And so we got to a really, really difficult place. And we were trying everything that we could, and there were times that my commute was so expensive being so far away because there were no jobs that were manageable closer, that rather than, get home in an hour, I was taking an hour and a half to 2 hours to get home to avoid the toll roads.
Yeah, it was tough.
And driving Uber out by work for an hour or two to let the traffic die down, and then driving home. So we had a lot of, difficult times. Where we got to a place where we maxed out everything that we could, and then it was like he said, we were choosing between fresh food and electricity. I can remember the day that we called our families and asked for help, like, hey, our power bill's like $119 and we can't pay it till Friday, and they're going to cut it off tomorrow. I think it was Tuesday or something like that.
We were a little bit behind on it already. It was tough.
Yeah. And $119 is crazy because, in the grand scheme of things, it's not even that much. It's not even that much.
But at the time, that was
everything.
A lot to come up with, you know. Uber was dead that day, or I forgot what had happened, but I was out for 6 or 7 hours and only made $60.
Yeah, didn't make it, and then once you cash it out, you have to pay fees, and so then from there, because I remember it was some of the last money we had on one of the credit cards, and we tried to put it on the credit card,
and they wouldn't let us.
The power company wouldn't let us. So it had to come out of the bank. But, all that to say that, for anybody out there who's struggling, we get it.
Yeah.
We get it. It's just, it was a very difficult time. And
we were at each other's throats constantly.
Mm-hmm.
It was, for those who don't know, I'm a smoker, and I was at the point, we couldn't afford cigarettes. So I was done. And it that didn't help at all.
No, I remember one day had talked to him on the phone in between Uber rides, and he was so stressed. I was like, all right, I'm going to stay out a little bit longer. So I did one extra ride, and I made like $10, and I went to the gas station, and I bought a pack of cigarettes, and I came home, and I literally threw it at him. And I was like, I can't handle this. You have to smoke, because this is just adding extra stress that we can't deal with. You know, yeah, you have to cut back and manage it, but you have to smoke, because I can't. We were both so on edge. Neither one of us was getting good sleep, so we were both really tired because we were anxious about the bills all the time.
Yep.
We were checking the bank account multiple times a day. We were doing, math all times of the day, trying to figure out what we could and couldn't
wake
afford.
up in the morning. I was like, all right, how much money do we not have today?
Yeah.
So what do we need to make to get it through the day where we can pay this bill that's due tomorrow
And eat
dinner tonight and tomorrow? Like, can we start planning 2 days ahead?
Right, like what can we eat that's going to be cheap? What can we eat and can we afford it? I remember it being in the age of so this is at this point it's 2017. 2018, and so we're sitting there, and frozen pizzas did not cost $12. They cost
like
maybe
$8,
$7 or $8. But even that was a struggle. You
Yeah.
know, we couldn't even sometimes afford that. You couldn't sometimes afford a $3-4 meal. So it got very, very difficult, and like you said, we were fighting a lot because there's outside force was putting stress on
Really,
us.
what it is we were aggravated and expressing that towards each other as like a hey. I need to get this off my plate. She was doing the same for me. Hey, I need to get this off my plate.
Mm-hmm.
And it just came out as, why are you yelling at me? Because I'm stressed too. Like, I get the situation clearly. And we were both saying the same thing. And we were butting heads because we were saying the same thing and not realizing it at the time.
Sure.
It was just coming across as like, hey, it's not just my fault here. Right.
Absolutely.
And, that what I was saying earlier about with the cigarettes, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a perfect example as, when you have to budget, you both have to make sacrifices. She made plenty of sacrifices as well.
Yeah.
And my God, I remember we both just like, all right, we're over this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think for us, one of the things that helped us so much in the beginning was this concept of our money. Even when we first moved in together, we did not have a shared bank account. We paid bills together, but it was kind of like a, hey, this is what the bills to live in this place cost, and he would pay portions on his debit card or send me money or whatever because we didn't have a shared bank account, but we were always very upfront about this is what my car payment costs, this is what my car insurance costs, these are all these bills, and kind of laying it out and figuring out how much
here's
we
the
have
necessities, here's the stuff that we can get rid of or finagle around. Now let's figure out what we can how we can get the bases done. If we have money for extras, then what can we keep, what can we get rid of?
Sure.
Things like that in the interim.
Right. So I think one of the things that helped us a lot was to prevent, arguments or tension or things like that in the very beginning was it's all ours. These bills are not yours or mine. This car payment is not yours or mine. The income is not yours or mine. And I think so much of our experience seeing older generations is almost like a competition. Like, oh, well, I make more money than you, so I get to decide. Or, you don't get to make that choice because you didn't earn the money. It's my money. Those sorts of things are like common themes that we've seen in people who have had a lot of tension and a lot of struggle over finances. And we both very much were like, I don't want that. I don't want that to be something.
That is the number one thing. It's like, okay, cool. Like if you make more money than me, in Uber today, are you the boss? No. Like, are you going to make all the decisions? Right. Or if vice versa, that's not fair.
It shouldn't be that way. If it's a partnership, you should be able to have an
You're
open and honest conversation about this is what we have. What are we going to do with it? Right.
I mean, if we have to sacrifice together, struggle together.
Yeah.
Why not just share everything? Right?
Exactly.
It just takes one less obstacle out. Right. Like let's say prime example. Mm-hmm. She's driving Uber. She had a terrible customer, or you had a bad day at work, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And I come home and I'm like, hey, I got us a case of beer. You get upset about it.
Yeah.
Well, back then, I mean, I would have as well, right? Mm-hmm. Like it would have been like, okay, well, we can't really afford that right now.
Right. Why did you even make a $20 purchase without talking to me?
Right. I made $100 today on Uber.
Right.
It's my money. I made that, so I'm going to grab a case of beer because I wanted it. Mm-hmm. Right. And taking that like, hey, it's mine out, also keeps you accountable as well, right? Mm-hmm. Like. If that were to be, let's say that were to be the case, I'd be like, I really want one. For starters, I would call you first, right?
Absolutely.
But also, it keeps you accountable. Thinking like, do I really need this? Let's go home. Let's assess the situation. Mm-hmm. Let's hang out for 5 minutes. Let's, talk about the day, and then we can move forward.
Yeah, a lot of our conversations in the very beginning were focused on needs versus wants. And there are a lot of people who are not willing to make sacrifices, and that's fine. You know, you choose the lifestyle that works for you, but you need to be comfortable with your partner about what lifestyle is for you and what lifestyle you can afford. Right? So, like, you know, you could make the example of, you know, needs versus wants. Like, do I need to go and get my nails done? No. Do you need to go golfing? No. Right? And so it's like, we like to do those things when we have extra money, maybe, you know, as just two examples. But, you know, kind of things that cost about the same, where you both may be making a sacrifice for a common goal for the future or a common goal for the present, whatever it is.
I mean, for me, it was cutting my own hair. Like, why go out and spend $30, $35 on a haircut when I don't have to?
Sure.
And, I mean, that was, you know, it was nice. So I paid, you know, $30 for a set of clippers and started doing it myself.
Right.
And it's not the best looking hair in the world, but, you know, it'll do. You know,
make an investment one time, you know?
Yeah. I mean, when I'm not in a job interview, I wear a hat, right?
Yeah.
So can't really tell anyway.
Right.
You know? So I was like, why am I going to spend $35 just to hide it, you know?
Right. And, you know, like, we washed our own cars and just little things that we could do that would cut down on costs. You know, we would, you know, think about what we could do to just make sure to be mindful of turning a light off, you know, just little things. It doesn't do a ton, but it does something. Taking stock of what you want to eat that week and looking at what's on sale, right? So, like, for me, every time that chicken is on sale, which is,
buy a little extra.
You know, we buy a little extra, freeze some, so that way, even though we're spending more this week, the following week or two, we don't have to spend
as much.
Exactly.
You know, especially if you can find it on like a good deal, or like a buy one get one, or hey, if you get something that's like marked down 50%, or you know, even 30%, you're like, okay, this is a good enough deal. I can't really pass it up. Yeah, sure, it expires in a couple of days. Throw it in the freezer. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. We started doing little things like an app that we use that you can get money back on groceries. You know, you take a picture of your receipt and submit it, and we've earned a couple $100s over the years, and we haven't been super.
It's not much,
vigilant, but it's something.
It's something, and it adds up, and they pay you out via PayPal.
You can also get paid out via gift cards, or you can use it to pay at certain stores. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can get paid out. It's developed more since we started using it than it was when we were using it in the beginning. But just little things. But I think, you know, that whole concept of ours versus mine or yours, and thinking about what were needs versus wants, were two of the biggest things that helped us to being transparent, because there are little things that add up that may not be part of what you consider your monthly expenses. You know, if you are a person who goes golfing twice a week, or if you're a person who gets your nails done every 6 weeks, or your hair done every 6 weeks, or whatever, those are parts of your, you know, recurring expenses. You know, we sat down and had to think about, okay, you have this subscription to this service, I have it, let's merge them, right?
Merge
like,
them
we
together,
don't both need Hulu, we don't both need Netflix, right? Those sorts of things.
Spotify for me was a must when we were driving. So we found the family plan. Ended up being, what, $4 more at the time? So it was like, okay, we both have Spotify. We actually saved money at that point.
We did. We were able to get rid of my Spotify. I had a student account, and it was going to expire because I was no longer a student.
That's
so
right.
we were able to
And
merge.
I think it did save, because the student pricing was the same as like the increase to the family plan or something.
Something along those lines.
It ended up making sense in some way. But, you know, the finances really aren't even the majority of it either. Like, it's a big chunk, but outside stressors come in many different ways. And, you know, a trigger warning for a lot of people here. You know, this is just as a heads up. This conversation is going to get grim. Let's just call it what it is. So if you've had, you know, recent, let's say, family members pass away, I don't know if you. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Just be wary, right? Because that's a huge one for us. We both lost very, very important people in our lives, and I would say I would much rather take the financial stress than that particular stress again, because you know, you're having to sit there and watch your other person just beaten and just down in the dumps and very, very morose. I guess that's the word I'm looking for.
Sure. Sure.
Like my grandmother, when she passed away, she raised me. She was my mom. Let's call it what it is. You know, she was my mother. You know, that hit me harder than anything, and it came on literally instantly. It was like, hey, she's sick and gone, and it was a very, very tough time. You know, between trips going back and forth to the hospital, we get there, they're like, hey, by the way, you know, all this is going on, but she's going to be fine. So like, okay, cool. We're going to come home for a day, recuperate. You know, I got to, you know, we adjust our schedules with work and whatnot.
Get some clean clothes, feed the cat.
Literally, we got a call the very next morning. We showed it. We got home at what, 3 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
And we woke up the next morning, like bright and early, to a phone call like, hey, you need to get back up here because this is the last day. It literally just happened that quick, basically overnight. But I remember for easily a couple months, just everything triggered me, and I'm sorry for anything that I may have said or done, but I was very, very volatile. I was on edge the entire time. I remember we fought quite a bit. I had some choice things said to me by other family members that set me through the roof. There was at one point I lost it and I broke a bunch of shit in this apartment, and I feel really, really bad about it. But
you know, it happened. Your energy out somewhere.
It happened. I in all fairness, I could have controlled it, but I didn't, and that's on me. And I admit, I fully admit it, and I fully understand what I did was extremely wrong and not cool, right? But
everybody grieves in different ways, though. So, you know, by the same vein, you know, we started this brand a little before COVID. We started using this brand as a live stream platform in May of 2020. My grandmother went into hospice in June of 2020.
So it was like prime COVID shutdown.
Was it June? Was it July?
June.
She was in hospice for a handful of months, or, you know, approaching that level for a handful of months. Things were bad. She had fallen, was in and out of the hospital. But for us experiencing the grief of the loss of his grandmother, it was very sudden, didn't anticipate, came out of nowhere. We also went through the period of long anticipatory, when is it going to happen, when is her struggle going to end, with my grandmother, because she was in hospice for many weeks. She was sick for a long time leading up to that. She had dementia, so she wasn't really her in the last handful of years of her life. Even though she was physically there, she wasn't mentally there. Her kidneys started shutting down towards the end, and it was very bad. And it was like, even in the last week of life, she wasn't eating and was still able to be alive. And we were all just kind of like, it sounds terrible, but we were all just kind of sitting there like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anticipation, sitting on edge at any time. Is the phone gonna ring? And that's it, right? So we've experienced grief in many different types of ways because of that.
It was a huge learning experience, you know, with both situations, learning how to deal with each other in that interim, right? You know, like I said, we fought a lot, and
it's not because there were problems between us. It's because we were both stressed and didn't really know how to communicate our feelings, and we're both just trying to live our lives and go back to a new normal. Because you can't say go back to normal, because it isn't normal, because it's going back to a new normal. But I think one of the things that has, you know, taught us a lot is trying to learn in the moment of your other half being stressed to ask the question, are you looking to vent or do you want solutions? Because sometimes people just want to get things off their chest and they don't want you to tell them how to fix it, or there is no way to fix it. Also being able to sit back and try to, you know, ask the question out loud, what do you need? And maybe they don't know the answer in that moment. And a lot of times
I didn't. Yeah. I know that I didn't. I know that I wanted to be left alone. You know, one of the hardest things for me was, you know, in the customer service field, you know, a lot of people come to you with petty ass problems, and in a time like that, I could give a shit less if you're a little fucking cold. Deal with it, you know. Mm-hmm. Can you turn the AC down? I'm cold, or you know, whatever. Maybe the music's too loud. Listen. Do you know what you fucking want to eat or not? No, then get the fuck out of here. You know, that's pretty much the mindset that I had, and there was a lot of other things. And it was just so constant to the point where I wanted to get home and not do anything. It's like, hey, I'm going to shut the door and I'm going to exist for the rest of the night, you know?
Sure. And everybody deals with it differently. I think that everybody, you know, goes through the stages in different order. Everybody goes through the stages with different amounts of time. Everybody has their own experience and needs different things following that. Some people put themselves into work or another hobby. Some people need to retreat. There's all different sorts of, you know, ways of coping. And I think, we have learned through going through so many different types of outside stressors in the years that we've been together to kind of step back sometimes and say, okay, this is not the time to pick a battle. This is the time to say, all right, what can I do for you, if anything? And if nothing, then maybe you need to be left alone for a little bit, and that's okay. And that's true for both of us. There are plenty of times where it's, I had moments where I was just like, you can't fix it. I just need to cry, or you just need to get your frustration out in some way, whatever the case may be. You need to be mindful of ways that you can protect them from it, but also have a balance of letting them feel it. There'd be things where I'm like, okay, I know this episode of our TV show focuses on someone passing away, so let's skip that. That's a small way I can protect you, but I can't protect you from feeling what you need to feel, because if you don't feel it, you're never going to be able to accept and process and move forward with your new normal. Because you can't, as much as you would love to give your left limb or, most of your liver or whatever it is to make sure they don't have to go through that pain, you can't.
I think really one of the hardest obstacles to battle with this, and I'm going to need you to probably fill in some of the blanks because I don't really know how to word this properly, but there's going to be times when, as the other person not going through the situation, right? Let's say, me to her when her grandmother passed, it was a lot of like, hey, I know you're sad, but I need you to get out of bed. We need to, we need to work. We need to do this. We need to do that. We got stuff to do. You got to handle situations like that very, very carefully and very meticulously, right? It's easy to be like, listen, it's been 6 months, get out of bed, let's go, or whatever the time frame is. It's very easy to say, come on, suck it up, buttercup, let's go. But it's, one of those things, it's like, okay, like she had said previously, everyone has a different time frame. And also, do what you can to help the other person, to be like, hey, I know you have this going on today. Let me take care of this for you. Or, hey, we have this going on. You stay home. Let me deal with it. Whatever the case may be, it's really easy to sit there and be like, this has been on me for a little while. And you just kind of got to take a step back before you say something that's going to be irreversible.
Yeah. I think...
Or do something to upset the other person, I guess, if that makes sense.
I think you need to tread carefully. I think... one of the best things that you can do is remember in any situation that is stressful to speak in sentences that start with the word I, not you. Because if I were to say, hey, I know that you're stressed and I know that you're going through this and I know that you need your time and, all of this is going on and I hate that I have to ask you, but, I kind of need to think about, understanding when, we might be able to get you back to work versus I need you to get out of bed and get back to work. We got to make money. It's like, or you need to get out of bed and get back to work, right? If you start your sentence with I, it's kind of, there's not really as much for the other person to object to because how are they going to say what you do or don't need or what you do or don't feel, right? When you start a sentence with you, it's very accusatory. Or
immediately your guard goes up. You're like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Don't accuse me.
Right.
Don't come at me with this. And it's very easy to put your guard up immediately.
Right. Like, what do you mean I need to do this? Why do you think that I need to? Who are you to tell me? Even if it's your best friend and your partner in life, it's easy to jump to conclusions about what they meant or to receive it not in a way that they intended for it to be received. So I think that when you focus on using I statements, that's really helpful. Try asking what they need that you can help with. Try, picking up on things that you might be able to take over for them if that's possible. Some things you will be able to, some things you won't be able to. And I think, also making sure that you as the person who is not the primary person going through it have support outside of them to have a venting space and a safe space to talk about it because it's going to be stressful on you too because your best friend is hurting and there's nothing you can do to take that pain away. And I think that was a big thing for both of us, learning that experience of how to find an outlet to let those feelings of, oh my God, I just want to take your pain away and I can't. And make sure that pain doesn't go into, I need you to get up and get back to our routine or whatever the case may be, right?
Like one of the biggest things that she did for me during that time was she fielded a lot of phone calls. Everyone knows, when someone passes away, you get a lot of phone calls. You get a lot of oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. And at a certain point, it's great, it's well and good. And I appreciate the thought. you know, you appreciate it afterward, but at the time you're going through it, you're like, please stop fucking calling me, stop texting me, just leave me alone.
Yeah, and I had a lot of people I had to text to be like, listen, he appreciates it, we love you, thank you so much. Right now, he just wants to kind of be on his own to process this, you know.
She fielded a lot for me, and it was amazing. You know, like I said, you know, there was a lot of choice things that happened with other family members, as everyone I'm sure has to deal with. You know, like, oh, well, this is mine. Oh, now that it's happening, oh, I want the money, I want the house, I want the jewelry, I want the pictures, I want the heirlooms. And it's like, okay, hold on. Let's take a step back here. You know, she fielded a lot of that for me, and that was very, very helpful. And one of the things that I appreciate the most.
And I think just stepping in to think, you know, what I think that my person would want during this time. You know, what can you take off their plate? You know, it may be as simple as maybe they can't wrap their brain around picking what's for dinner. That was something that he did a lot for me. Like, I remember when my grandmother passed away, I had to be like, I literally could give a fuck less what we eat. Pick something. I'm not picking. And I just remember, like, even saying it in that tone, like, I'm not fucking picking, you do it.
And that's another thing is, in a situation like that, like, it's easy for me to be like, why are you yelling?
Right.
And then there goes the argument, right? It's just take a step back, be like, no worries, I got you.
Yeah.
And just give the space that's needed, and do what's needed of you.
I think,
and it's tough.
I think understanding that their feelings are not meant to be directed at you is something that's really hard, especially when they're speaking directly to you, especially if you're frustrated or having a bad day and you yell. Of course, the person on the receiving end is going to think you're yelling at them. So we've had to kind of take a step back sometimes and just say, I'm yelling towards you, I'm not yelling at you, right? And that helps us a lot because, you know, for us, yes, we have supportive friends and family, but at the end of the day, this is what we have at home. This is our connection. This is, you are my best friend and you are my partner. And so I'm naturally going to gravitate towards, you know, saying these things to you as opposed to anybody else, right? And whether that's finances, whether that's grief, whatever it is, whatever stressors are coming at you from the outside.
As I say, it's not just grief. It's with everything,
right?
You know, and one of the things that we do a lot here is like, who's grumps? Right. and it's like, okay, hold on, my fault. I didn't realize that I was, you know, acting that way towards you. And it's also a way to be like,
and now, like, we've kind of gotten to a point after many years together where we can kind of just give the eyebrows and it'll be like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to come out that way. Hold on, let me back up, you know.
It's accountability for us both.
Sure. But I think just, you know, a lot of it is trying to notice what you could take off their plate. A lot of that is being careful about your communication. A lot of that is checking your own feelings, you know. Maybe this is not something that's worth even bringing up. Like, you know, for instance,
that happens a lot.
Let's say you have divided the chores in your household in a certain way and your person is going through something. They're working extra hours to make up for finances or they're grieving and they have that on their plate.
Take something else.
You know, maybe it's not worth being like, hey, it's your job to put out the trash and you didn't do it. Or,
well,
hey,
you didn't do it.
You know what I mean? But you see what I'm saying, right? Like, maybe it's not worth being like, hey, hello, why is the trash not put out? Maybe you need to take a step back and think, what are the reasons that they could have not put the trash out? Did they forget? Do they have too much on their plate? Whatever the case may be. Instead of jumping right to accusatory, just being like, maybe I should just put it out myself, you know?
Yeah, or ask, like, hey, you know, I know
hey,
you
did
had
you
a long,
remember, you know?
Right. Hey, I know you had a long day. Do you need me to do a couple of these things for you?
Right.
And it sparks the conversation of like, hey, tell me what would help you the most, for one, to take off your plate, but also, two, just in case you forgot, like, hey, oh, okay, cool, no worries. Like, oh, no, I'm sorry, I got it, just been busy. Or it could be as much as like, hey, can you do that for me, please? Thank you so much. Right? And I know that seems a little bit of like, what's that term when, you know, things just seem so passive but yet aggressive? Nicey-meeny. I think that's what I'm thinking of. That's the term, nicey-meeny.
Okay, Andy.
But yeah, it may seem that way, but if you can just, you know, just phrase it like that, right? Or phrase it in some way that it's like, hey, I noticed this wasn't done. Do you need me to do that for you? I know you had a long day. Boom. And the answer could be like, oh, no, I'll go ahead and get it. Or, hey, actually, yeah, could you do that for me?
I think giving an open-ended question for that is helpful. Just, you know, hey, I noticed that this is, you know, would it be helpful if I did that for you? Or not even necessarily an open-ended question, but asking the question in a way that is just gentle.
Versus being like, hey, why didn't you take the trash out?
Right. Why didn't you get the dishes done? Or, oh my God, the dishes aren't done. Ugh. You know, that kind of thing. Like
tones, words.
Absolutely.
could very well be the difference between an argument that night or something better,
I think, one of the common themes against all stressors is trying to remember that it is meant to be you two against everything else,
Yep.
not you two against each other tackling the problem. Because if you're working in a way where you're working against each other to tackle the problem, number one, it's probably not going to get tackled. And number two, that's not really indicative of a true partnership, at least in the way that we define the word. It should never
True.
be that I'm sitting there being the one tackling one problem, or that he's being the one tackling a
Yeah,
problem.
we tackle everything together. I mean, sure, we kind of divvy up chores a little bit differently every so often. There's no real, except for the laundry that's somehow fallen on you. And
It ebbs and flows in different seasons,
it does.
though.
It does.
I think.
But everything else we tackle together, and it's like, hey, I need help doing this, and we navigate those waters when we get to them.
But I could say the same thing of any of the chores that you do. I think it's just that
That's really what I was saying, is like we alternate pretty much everything else.
Yeah, I mean,
like I've got my sweeping and mopping. She hates mopping.
I hate mopping. Everybody
And
has
I don't like
chores.
putting up laundry. So
Right.
it's
Everybody
perfect.
has chores they don't like. Finding a way to divide responsibilities. And I think that also kind of like one of the points that I
mop. I'm sorry. I just thought, I
okay.
was like, when was the last time I mopped? It's been a little while.
one of the points that I think I wanted to kind of focus on in this episode too is I think it's important to recognize that society does not have the same
Stigma as it used to, right? Stigma or
I was thinking more of like configuration of like a conventional household is like what I was thinking of. So like when I was growing up, it was very much the case that, in the early 90s that there was the man who worked and the woman stayed home with the kids, or the woman worked part-time and the man was the breadwinner, and blah, blah, blah. That's kind of, and I say
The
it like that.
convention, yeah.
Right, that was the standard, right? But it isn't that way anymore. And I think it's important to point that out.
It's hard to be that way anymore.
Well, yeah.
Unless one of y'all makes a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
I think the new standard for like getting out of like the poor classification is like $150,000 a year income.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I think the middle class is between that and like 170.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, inflation has gone up so much. And pardon me for 1 second. Bacardi is behind everything. Hey,
Come here.
get out from back there.
Come here, baby. Bacardi, baby, come here. You're not supposed to be back there, and you know that.
Get out from back there.
Come here. Hi.
girl.
Good girl.
Sorry about that.
So, I think kind of talking about the change in convention and standard is important because it impacts the finances. It impacts the way that couples handle things. Like we talked about very much how it's like not a yours versus mine or ours thing. It being the case that, we don't live in the generation of our parents. It is not that one person works and one person doesn't necessarily. That's not how most households these days run.
It's tough. If it does, like, good for you.
If it does, good
What
for
do
you.
you do? Y'all hiring.
Right. What kind of jobs do you have? What kind of certifications do we need? But I think that's important because it changes the way that couples communicate. It changes the way that couples tackle problems. Kind of like in the household that I had growing up, my dad worked. My mom worked part-time part of the time that I was a child. She worked full-time part of the time that I was a child. But most of the time, she actually didn't work. And, my mom was the one that handled grocery shopping and meal planning and all these things, running the house. And now it's kind of like we have to give ourselves more grace as humans because, a lot of households were built on the idea that one person works and one person doesn't and manages the house. And you kind of have to think about like, okay, what's a fair way to divide our responsibilities because we both work and we both have stuff that we have to do around the house. And, sometimes stuff doesn't get done because there's other stuff that's more important. We have 2 cats and we have things that we have to take care of, and thinking about ways that you can kind of make it manageable to divide it up amongst the two of you so that, we talked about this a little bit last week too, I struggle so much with seeing these, my other half is lazy and they never get anything done, or screw them, they're this, blah, 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 blah. Just like, not you, but trying to like prevent it from being that way. Like, why is that something that people are comfortable settling with?
It's, and that's a touchy subject because you don't want to upset anybody, but at the same time, it's something that needs to be said.
You know, I think thinking about your values, thinking about your goals, thinking about how you want to tackle those goals, what your timeline is, having that, you know, those difficult conversations that we had early on have been so much of our foundation, you know, like, you know, do you want to be a homeowner? Where do you want to invest money? How do you want to invest money? When do you want to invest money?
What are we going to sacrifice to be able to invest money?
Sure.
You know, like,
sure.
There was that term, was it keeping up with the Joneses, right? You know, everybody's like, oh, you know, well, we have a little bit more income, so we can go buy a little bit more, you know, expensive of a house, or buy a little bit more expensive of a car, and you know, before you know
clothes, purse, watch,
right,
whatever, you know, haircut, doesn't matter.
And when life happens, it hits harder when you don't have a savings, you know, and that's always been my thing is, when I grew up, I didn't have much, right? It was very, very tight. You know, so I love to have a safety net, you know, and that's been something that's huge, and I'm glad that we both are on the same page about that.
Sure.
Granted, I like to splurge a little bit more. Like everyone, like the stigma is that the women are the shoppers.
No,
that's me.
I'm a bargain hunter. I will coupon and I will wait until it's on sale. And
she'd be like, man, this thing's like only $28, and I haven't bought anything in about 6 years, so nah, I'm just not. I don't feel comfortable spending the money. And she'll call and she'll talk in circles for about 30 minutes, and then I find out the price, and I'm like, are you kidding? You're calling me about $26 right now? Why?
Listen, because there was a period of time in our lives where we had to make those phone calls about $26, right?
We did, and you know, as much as I appreciate it, it's literally like I'm like, what, are you buying a car? Are you buying a house? Like, what are you buying?
Literally,
to find out, it's like something from Amazon that is just on sale, and it's like, okay, just get it. It's something for the stream. It's something for kitchen. It's like, dude, stop.
As a great example, I love to read. And in the years that we've been together, I have not made time for reading and or haven't had time for reading a handful of those years.
We literally went back and forth over this topic for 6 months.
I debated the purchase of a Kindle for 6 months, and there was a period where it was on sale for about $80, including a case. And I still didn't want to do it. And we had plenty of money. We had the ability for me to buy it, and I didn't want to do it, you know? And I think, you know, trying to navigate those needs versus wants, and also trying to be able to kind of figure out
how the reason we didn't, thankfully we didn't at the time, is because that's when I lost my job. Was it before that? Before my restaurant closed? There was some deciding factor why I didn't buy it for you. And I don't remember what it was.
Because I had said I was going to maybe ask for one for Christmas, and then I wasn't sure if I wanted one, and I was like, I don't know if I can justify the Kindle. And so, you know, my mom and dad had been asking. Because my birthday falls in December, so my birthday and Christmas are 10 days apart. And so my parents had said, you know, start thinking of ideas, and they're always asking me for ideas for Christmas and, you know, trying to figure out, like, what we're going to get each other and what they can, you know, if we want anything that they can get us. And I remember, you know, going back and forth from, like, July on about whether or not I was going to do it. And my parents being like, well, you didn't seem sure, so we didn't get you one, because you couldn't decide. And I think that was part of it. But, you know, just little things like that, where after, you know, years of struggle, it's like, whoa, okay, $80 feels like a lot. Yeah. And you know, that's another thing I think that is important. Kind of, I know we're kind of jumping all over the place,
but it's stuff that keeps, you know, comes to the forefront of the brain as we talk.
Sure. You know, I think
it's a lot.
Defining what you and your partner think about as a lot of money is a big thing. Like, what is a lot of money, right? But we don't have to say out loud for us, but I think
I feel comfortable saying that when you ask me for my opinion on stuff that costs less than $50, I think that's ridiculous. I think it's absurd. Like I said, you know, she'll contemplate, and she'll basically list a pros and cons list out in my ear, and I'm like, yep, how much is it? What? And I just hang up the phone. I'm just like, just get it.
But I think that that's important. I think you need to understand what your other person thinks is a lot, right? Because that's subjective, right? Especially depending on your own budget that you had before the other person, how you were raised, what you think is a lot of money matters. Because, right, like, you know, we'll look at places like right now, we're looking for a place to rent, and we're kind of like looking at where I'm like, I don't want to pay that much. And he's
I think we're both like, why is it so expensive?
Well, but like,
we're looking at how, like, when I first rented a house, literally my rent was $900 a month.
And the house
A
we
little
lived in
under
before
1,000.
here was $800 a month.
Yeah. And my place was like 2,200 square feet, something like
Yeah.
that. It was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Huge. And it was on an acre of land, like, to top it all off.
Right. And so, like,
Like,
there's
this is
inflation
just-
to account for and all of that. But I
It
think
hurts my soul. It hurts.
It,
God, it hurts.
it hurts me too. But I think that will help to prevent a lot of arguments. You're right. Knowing that
Yeah.
he doesn't think it's necessary for me to check with him about a $50 or less expense helps me, because then it's like, oh hey, I might like in passing be like, oh hey, by the way, I bought the cats an extra toy that was like $12, and he's like, cool, great, doesn't matter. But like knowing where that threshold is, so that it's not, hey, I bought this, and then the other person being like, what the heck? Why didn't you talk to me first? I think that can be.
I think what we need to do is clear the air here, because when I say, like, you don't need to talk to me about $50 purchases, let's say you went out and made a $50 purchase every single day, then we're going to have a different conversation.
Sure. Yeah, clarify is I think what you
Clarify,
mean.
right.
Yeah.
You know, we don't spend money hardly ever, you
Mm-hmm.
know, on other than necessities. It's like, hey, you know, I bought us an extra pack or two of chicken because it was on sale. All right, cool. Like, that's pretty much our, like, hey, this is what we splurged on this week.
Or
is a little
we-
extra food or something that's a little bit better. Like, we started getting, like, what do you call it? Like, the farm fresh eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Makes a huge difference for both of us. Like, it used to be, like, it got to the point we were both getting sick eating eggs.
Yeah.
So we
But-
wanted to give it a try, and they're pretty great. We don't eat or use eggs very often,
Right.
for it to really make too much of a difference. But that is an expense that we talked about for a little while.
It's literally the difference of like $3, and we still were debating about it, because it's going to become a recurring expense, right?
Exactly.
Little things like, okay, you know, do we want to add a subscription for, you know, another TV service or whatever the case may be? Like those
Yeah.
things where they're going to be recurring expenses.
Or, hey, by the way, Netflix is going up. What do we do?
Right, do we want to keep it or do we want to cancel it? And I think
Yeah.
that all falls into those needs versus wants. It's, you know, what can we justify spending, you know, and whatever works for you, because everybody's going to have a different situation. You know, for him saying $50 is a threshold where he doesn't think I need to talk to him about it, I still let him know. You know, generally, I think, you know, we are very transparent with each other about our expenses. You know, I'm typically the one that is paying the bills. That's one of the things that I'm the one who logs in to make the payment for the bills, is what I should say, not paying the bills. But you know, that's one of the things that I took on as a responsibility in our division of responsibilities when we got together. But I'm always making sure he knows, like, hey, by the way, did you see that the power bill was X this month? Did you see that our renter's insurance changed to X amount, whether it went
And
up or
my
down?
job is to go to work and make my money and give her my card so she can pay the bills out of my money, my card. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. That was inappropriate.
But, you know.
I don't make that. She makes more money than I do, I'm sure.
No, I don't.
I actually don't know anymore. Like,
It's probably about even at this point.
at this point, because it's slow season, I don't make squat.
Yeah, I was saying you
It's-
generally, like, throughout the year, you make more money than I do. But, oh, you know what? That's another thing. We talked lightly about competition. It being like you make more money than me. Why does it matter?
That's why I said that, because we were talking about that on the patio earlier.
Why does it matter? You know, I was watching a friend of ours, and they may be listening to the podcast, and they were talking about how, you know, they are not the person in their marriage who makes the most money of the two, and how and just comfortably just said it. And I was like, you know what? Thank you for being a person who can just say that. You know why? Because why should it matter? I don't know if it's a testosterone thing, or if it's because for years men did it. I don't know. It feels like more often than not I hear it as like a men get upset, but maybe that's not fair to say, but that's just been my experience.
Listen, I'm pretty sure I speak for all men when I say we know that women are superior beings.
That's not what I'm looking for you to say.
I know it's not what you're looking for, but we understand it. So cool, have at it. You want to make more money? Great. Be my sugar mama. Come on.
But not.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Wait, we missed. But not all men are as comfortable with that concept.
I would love a sugar mama. I'd be the one. I'll be in a maid's outfit. You come home and be like, oh no, oops, did I forget to dust over here?
I just collect myself. Sorry.
I would say I'm sorry, but I'm not. If you were a millionaire and I didn't have to work, are you kidding me?
But okay, but
I would answer to every beck and call that you ever had.
But can you at least say that it's fair that there are men who don't feel that way?
Of course, there's exceptions to every rule.
And there are women who don't feel that way too. Fine, you know, and
There's exceptions to every rule. That's not
right.
what I wasn't talking about the small portion. I'm just talking about like the mass majority.
Sure.
Of
I
men
think that there
feel the same way.
are people in every relationship. I shouldn't just say men or women, but people in every relationship who will be impacted by that, and kind of like it feels like a competition, right? There are people who get uncomfortable when it's like one person makes more money than the other. And I wish it wouldn't be that way. You know, in a true partnership, what difference does it make? It's your money goes into a pot, you know, or like people where it's just like, oh, we make all this money, and you have like, you know, maybe you have separate bank accounts for your own reasons, or maybe you don't talk about finances for your own reasons, but I just feel like for us, this has worked so well. And we just hope that other people can find the same peace that we have about it. I think peace is a good word.
I mean,
you know?
she knows. I have a separate bank account that I use for porn sites. No, I'm just kidding. No, the reason why I keep it is because when we go to finance like a vehicle or buy a home, through that particular bank, I get better interest rates than you can get on like the public market.
Sure.
And that's
because of having military members in your family.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean it's you know you can't beat interest rates from Navy Federal. You just can't.
Right.
It's tough. And that's something that I want to keep for those purposes. Like when we go to buy a house, we are definitely financing it through them. Buying a car, same thing. I mean, you're getting 2 and 3 and 4% interest rate less than what you can get elsewhere. Unless some places, you know, are advertising 0%. Great, if you can get it, fantastic. But if you can't, then you know we got to go through other you know this channel, and it helps.
But
quite
we both know what's in both bank accounts that we have.
Oh yeah, I mean you have access to it. And
Absolutely.
I've got nothing to hide. I was making a joke.
I know, but I'm trying to clarify for the audience who maybe doesn't know that you're making a joke because they don't know us that well.
That's fair. I'm a jokester, and I make a lot of jokes when I'm uncomfortable. So there's that.
He makes a lot of jokes when he's not uncomfortable too, but
yeah, that's true.
You just make jokes a lot. Yeah. But I think, you know, this episode has kind of like woo.
It has gone a little ziggy-zaggy, is that?
A snobby term?
That's a snobby term, yeah.
Ziggy-zaggy. But I think it's important, you know, we wanted to talk about these things because those are two of the biggest outside stressors, and you guys may have outside stressors that impact you in a different way. But
it all comes down to the same resolution, you know, be a little bit thoughtful of your wording, right? Like she had said earlier, start sentences with like, hey, I need this from you, or I don't know that I'm going to be honest. I didn't really get that point to be honest. I don't think that is the exact way to handle it. I think handling it in a more open-ended question manner, like, hey, I've noticed that you've got a lot going on. How can I help?
Sure, and that's a better way to phrase it instead of like, hey, you got a lot going on. You know, I think.
But if I came to you and said, hey, you got a lot going on, can I help? Right. I think the emphasis needs to be on the how can I help, or can I help you in some way? Can I take this thing off your plate?
And it's not an end all be all solution. Just generally speaking, starting a sentence with you can be received as accusatory,
as a little defensive, sure,
as opposed to starting a sentence with I. You know, I have noticed that. You know, you're having a hard time around the house with everything. You know, what can I do to take off your plate? That kind of thing, right?
Wow.
Like,
you know what you can take off my plate? None of it. I got it. I'm joking.
Versus you haven't been.
No, I get it.
You see what I mean?
I guess I do see that now as a more clarified thing.
Like if I were to say like, hey, like I've noticed you're having a tough time. What can I do for you? Versus you're not doing your chores. What the hell, right? Like,
see, that's different because you ended it with what the hell.
Okay, fine.
But if you were like, hey,
if I were to say,
hey, you weren't doing
I have
your chores,
noticed you're struggling.
Can I do anything to help you?
Versus you're not doing your chores. Can I help
think
you?
You're right. I think if you started it with, I think you're right. I get it. I'm getting it. I get it. I forgot. I get it now.
You're upset that I explained it because you didn't want it to be right.
No, I didn't say that I didn't want it to be right. What I was saying was that I misunderstood.
Fair enough.
Or didn't understand. I needed clarification. But also, then again, I also forgot that example.
I could have used a better example.
No, I had forgotten that you did use that example earlier.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
So I think if you were to say, like,
see, now we're fighting. Now I'm angry.
I think if you were to say, I have noticed like that you're having a tough time, how can I help you? Versus you're not doing your chores, you must be having a tough time, how can I help you? Right? Like you might be like, what the hell? That's not fair. I've been doing as much as I can, right? You know.
Exactly.
Right,
like, hey, the extra hours of work, grieving, or any type of outside stressor. You know, I think another one is the, you know, the point that you had brought up earlier, which is what we do quite often is, hey, hold up, I know this is starting, you start noticing that things are getting out of hand. Do you need me to listen, or do you need me to provide solutions?
Right.
And that is a huge one.
Right.
Also, we start making a joke out of it when one of us starts getting a little, like when you can hear the tone of voice, right? Where you can start sensing that stress. Like, who's Grumps?
Yeah. And
right?
then
We
it's just
say
kind of
that.
like, shush, okay, I'm Grumps, whatever,
Right.
And
then it kind of lets you know, like,
lightens
as
out.
the person, you're like, okay, maybe I need to watch my tone, or, at least take that into
take
consideration.
a deep breath, maybe,
Exactly.
is a good one,
Exactly.
But the venting or solutions will help a lot because sometimes it's tough for us to receive their stress and not want to provide solutions, right? But if you know that that's not what they're looking for, you might just be doing more of a, and yeah, I'm sorry, that sucks,
Literally saying the words, that sucks, sometimes is the best thing you could do for someone. Bacardi, please don't
No,
do that.
no.
Hey. Oh, Jesus. Bacardi. God dang it. Hey, I noticed your cat has been a little shit lately. Is there any way that I can help?
She's our cat now. Or my cat, not our cat. Okay.
She
almost knocked the camera over for reference. She literally just jumped between the camera and the
literally,
desk and just...
before we started, we were going outside to talk and try to figure out like where we're going to go with this, which clearly that conversation didn't stick with either one of us.
Oops.
But I came back inside to grab us a drink. Literally on my way out, both cats were in boxes that we had set out for them because they love boxes, right? Any cat owners know.
Packages, they just like to play in them.
They basically like, ooh, open this up so I can have the box.
Yeah.
Anyway, both of them the boxes were close enough together that I had to kind of do a little squeeze through. Well, one cat was in each box and they decided to attack me as both boxes knocked over and tripped me up. So I was like, oh no, and I'm trying to catch myself, and literally I scared both cats because they're like, who tripped the giant? And here we go.
Can I just say from a third-party perspective, it was really
She's
funny.
watching this happen going,
He almost fell through the screen door on our patio. It was pretty funny.
oh, literally.
He's okay, the cats are okay, but it was
Everyone's
pretty fun.
fine. But it got to the point I was like, they're not allowed to have boxes anymore. At least anywhere remotely close to the walkways.
Oh my god, it was so funny. I was trying so hard not to laugh at you. Oh my gosh.
Trying so hard? You didn't really try that hard. This is what I hear from the patio.
I didn't.
That right there.
You would have laughed if it was me. You would have.
Oh, I was.
Yeah.
I would have. I have. I'm sure I have.
Oh my god.
That's another thing. Being able to understand that the other person is allowed to laugh at you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
In certain circumstances. I mean, I feel like. At the moment, that was frustrating. But it's like, God, what are you going to do, right? And maybe that's another thing, is accepting that, there's some things that are out of your control, and you can only control your actions.
Yeah. Looking at the circle
right?
of control, right? What you can control, what is within your circle of control that is outside of your own actions, and then what's in the circle around that you absolutely can't control, and how you deal with it, right?
I mean, literally, the difference between an argument and not is, a tone, verbology or verbiage. Like the words that you choose to use, right? Verbology. What am I, Harry Potter?
I don't know, man.
The mandrakes. I learned about those in verbology.
That's herbology.
That's what I said, verbology.
Okay. But I think, there was a point. Oh my gosh, my train of thought just completely derailed.
So what I had said was, the words that you choose to use and the tones that you choose to speak into the other person.
Oh, okay.
It could be the difference of an argument or not.
It was circle of control where my thought kind of came from. So I think, being mindful of the fact that some seasons of life will just be difficult and there's nothing you can do about it, and understanding that it's a season. It's very difficult and much easier said than done to recognize and treat it as if it is a season while it's happening. Because I can say that in the times we were struggling financially, it sure as hell did not feel like a season. It sure as hell did not feel like it was ever going to end.
It felt like it never was going to end. It felt like a never-ending loop.
And it was a struggle. But I think, being mindful of that, knowing that there is a season and it may not be forever is helpful. I think understanding that... we have a
got a baby.
I have a Bacardi. What are you doing, baby? Hi. Are you on the podcast? Are you on the podcast? Say hi, everybody.
She's making me blend in with the green screen. There we go.
She is.
She's a good girl. Hey,
Understand.
look at that. We're invisible.
Your invisibility cloak.
She's a good girl. She is a pain in the butt, but she's a good girl. Yes.
But knowing that it, will only be a season, and knowing that in the end, when you're through that season,
It makes you stronger.
It makes you stronger, and that, like, now we appreciate things in a different way. We can appreciate good times between each other better because we had times that were not so easy.
Yep.
We can appreciate the ability to not have to check your bank account 15 times a day to make sure that you can buy dinner, right? And if you're in that season, something like that right now, when it does get better, just know that you will make smarter, more intentional financial decisions.
Yeah.
I think, or at least that's been the case for us.
It has. We sit back and we say, okay, is this a want or is it a need? And if it's something that we need, is there a more budget friendly option? We penny pinch like crazy. Like let's call it what it is. We do. We penny pinch like absolutely crazy. Bacardi.
Get down.
If you ruin this podcast, I'm going to be mad at you.
Okay, that's fine. Sit there.
She's not allowed in here next episode.
She's too distracting.
She is distracting.
But you were saying penny pinching.
Yeah. And it's not even just so much with the finances, but like we have learned, again, the phrase, we say it all the time. Do you need solutions or you just want to vent? Right? Like I vent from my day. And she's like, oh, well, maybe you... Do you want to vent or do you need a solution?
Right. And
because there's no solution. I love my job, but I love to vent about my job.
Right, but also being able to be willing to actually be the person who's willing to let them vent and not provide solutions is a whole other component. Because sometimes it's easy to jump right in with that, and you just got to be mindful of not letting yourself. Yeah.
Listening, that's a huge one. And not just like the, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. But actually, being present in the conversation, that means the world to the other person. And, if it was, the same thing happening to you, right? It means more in that moment than just getting it off your chest, right?
Sure.
You actually being listened to, it makes you feel better. And it probably, in all fairness, cuts the venting in half. Let's be honest.
I think being present for them to vent. And I think... there was something I was going to say. My train of thought is just not sticking with me today. But I think, I was hoping that, like, if I started that sentence, sometimes I start a sentence and I don't know where it's going, and Michael
That's
Scott.
okay. It happens to the best. Love The Office.
Me too. Crap, what was I going to say?
All right, so do you remember about what I had said to spark that thought?
Venting, being listened to.
Being present in the moment and on your phone? Quality time?
Being present for the important conversations about the stressors too. Not even, I think like for us, like when we're talking about budget, we try to make sure that there are no other distractions.
No, we put our phones down. And
unless
that is
we're
one
doing
rule
math on the calculator of, that sort, or like if it's
or
like,
looking up the bill or something, we're not scrolling through TikTok, when we're having these conversations, because that's another thing. It's like, hey, take this seriously because it is, it's our lives, right? We only get one of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of them, one of it. We only get one.
Yeah, we only get one. There you go. Change it. There you go. Now you don't have to worry which one it was.
And it's very easy to turn, like the whole takeaway really is it's very easy to turn against each other and be combative, but it's also very easy to realize that y'all are both saying the same thing, and it's just and clashing. And if you understand, more and more about the other person and how to navigate with them during these stressful situations, it makes them a heck of a lot easier, and it makes your relationship stronger. And
these seasons are seasons, and you will get through them, and it will help to be part of your story. And it's part, like, now we can sit here, and having gone through multiple stressful times, it's not like we're not in a stressful time right now, because we are, but we've learned a lot from previous stressful times to be able to apply that to our current situation and to be able to try to help other people.
She spiraled for 2 days. Don't let her say that.
I did. No, I was, if you would let me finish, I was going to say that I was actually going to say, as a good example, right now, we are going through a stressful time with trying to find a place to move, and I have, like, looked at him and been like, we're not paying that much, and sent him places where he's like, okay, we're absolutely not living there. That place is not at any level of safe or in our standards or whatever.
No,
but...
because
he knows how to handle, he's like basically like, I get it, I know you're trying to cut down and try to make sure that we get the best deal, but that's not the way to do it, and like trying to remind me that like this is not the way to cut corners.
Literally, I would rather pay an extra $100 to be safe or be in a safe neighborhood, to where let's say 9 o'clock at night, you got to walk to the gas station or go to the gas station. You know, let's say we got to go to the grocery store later in the evening. Mm-hmm. It needs to be safe.
I know.
And I'd rather pay an extra $100 for that.
Sure. And there's plenty of times that, you know, you will find that your other person is, like we use the term spiraling, kind of like, you know, and you have to be able to manage that well.
This one's a windmill.
I've been doing that a lot lately. But
if you're watching the video, you understand. Oh, she's flipping me off.
No, I'm not.
With all 4 fingers. She said, can you read between those lines?
But knowing how to approach the situation when they're going through that, because he could have easily just been like, okay, you're losing it. But really it was like, hey, I know you're really stressed about this, but we're going to find a place. And it doesn't have to be that, you know, like being able to...
Be fun, and I got you.
I know. And being able to take a step back from that situation and not just reacting immediately to be like, no, you know.
Also, can we talk about how big of a spiral Zillow is? Like, we start off in our budget, and like an hour later, we're like, I wouldn't pay $10 million for this home. That one fixture doesn't look right. Meh, skip. Yeah. And it's like, hold on.
Those countertops are outdated. How dare you charge extra for that? You know?
Right, we're sitting there looking at multi-trillion-dollar mansions, and we're like, hold on, wait a second. Let's take a step back here. And then we go back to what our budget is, and we're like, crap. Yeah. Why did we do this?
One of our favorite pastimes is looking through Zillow and or watching shows like $1 Million Listing or like Beachfront Bargain Hunt or things like that, where it's like we could never, in our price range currently, afford these things. And we're I don't know, I think it makes us feel better to just like chime in and be like, really?
Yeah,
They're
but then
going to
we're
go
looking
with
for
that
a
one?
place where, like, really, there's that backsplash that doesn't go with those countertops.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think...
Oops.
Yeah. It's comic relief, I think, for us.
I think so, too, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think hopefully some of these strategies will help. You know, like I said, we were kind of all over the place, but I think really the takeaway is just understanding that outside stressors are not meant to be you two against each other, and trying to do your best to prevent it from coming in between you, and making sure that it's more of remembering it's you guys against the problem is part of what has helped us so much. And we've learned so much from those seasons of life that we've been able to apply to different stressful situations we've gone through later, remembering that it's a season, you know.
Yeah. There's no I in team, you know, but there is an M and an E, so it's all about me. I'm just kidding. But seriously, though, there's no I in team. No. And you have to remember that it's y'all two, it's your family, right? Mm-hmm. It is your family versus the world, essentially. You know, and that's one of the hardest mindsets to really keep and not break away from, because it's real easy to take your frustration out on the other person.
Sure.
When really you're not even taking it out on them. It's perceived that way, and that's what starts the argument.
Sure.
It is, hey, I'm frustrated in your direction. I need to vent. They need to vent. You're venting towards each other, and that's when the miscommunication happens. Mm-hmm. We had said, what was it, the last episode, one of the biggest things in a relationship is communication. I would say that is easily 90% of all problems that can be solved with just a little communication. Mm-hmm. You know, expressing what the other needs. And regardless if it's an outside stressor, if it is... you know, physical, emotional, whatever the case may be, talk about it, vocalize it. Mm-hmm. It's like, let's say I need a hug, right? Well, I'm not going to get one unless I ask for it.
Right.
Well,
or
maybe I will.
One. Or
right.
Initiate one. Right.
I think that was a bad example.
Like
she hugs me all the time.
Right. So, like, I may not know he needs a hug in that very moment unless he says, hey, can I have a hug? Or I need a hug. Or, like, you know, yes, we hug all the time. But you, in that very moment, if you're feeling like you need a hug, like, you know.
I was using that as an example for, you know, for anything. You know, hey, I need to talk about a situation.
Sure.
Hey, we need to get more physical more often, you know, to keep the other person happy.
Sure.
You know, whatever the case may be. Like I said.
Or, hey, like, I'm feeling stressed about our budget. We need to reevaluate. Exactly. That's another good example. You know, hey.
90% of the problems can be solved with communication. Mm-hmm. At least 90%.
If both parties are willing.
True.
Yeah. So, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to say about this subject? I feel like I kind of have said all I wanted to say.
I'm going to be honest with you. I want to go argue about finances and bills and use bad terminology and
verbology.
Verbology.
We'll go study verbology.
No, I'm only kidding. Honestly, I think we had most of the points on the head. I'm sure there's a lot of things that we we missed, and that's another thing about the good thing about these podcasts being unscripted is because we can come touch back on further things in the future, right? It does leave the conversation a little bit open ended, and again, not everything that we do works for every relationship. You need to find out what works best for you guys, and what is going to be best for your family, right? And best for your partner. Your
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. You just gotta figure out what works for you, and it may not be that the first thing that you try is what works.
Exactly.
And you may try something, and then you have to have an open and honest conversation and kind of evaluate: is this working for us?
Communicate.
So, yeah, communicate. So.
Yeah, and like I said, that's really what it's about, and and I know there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of jumping. But we hope that y'all got a good takeaway from this, and I hope that it's useful in y'all's lives. Like I said, it's just one of those things that we have come to figure out over the past few years that, with different stressors, that these are what work for us. And it may not necessarily work for you, but you got to find, what does work for you, and it if that involves different styles of communication. What have you, different styles of really anything. It's I think I'm just rambling here. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say.
I think we've covered it though.
I mean, it's really easy for me with you, right? Who's grumps?
Yeah.
If you're starting to get a little heated, right? Do you need solutions or do you need to vent? That's a huge one. Other than that, we talk about our problems, and they generally resolve themselves. As of late, we've had a couple of outside things, and some of them still kind of creep through every now and again. But again, we go back to our bases, and that usually solves it.
Sure.
There might be other solutions, like, hey, cut back from your job a little bit. You're getting a little stressed. Like when she was working up in Georgia, it literally got to the point where I was like, hey, I know you're not hearing me, that you need to take care of yourself, so please find a different career path. Quit your job, essentially. And that was a little bit more of a drastic action, but it was what was needed.
Yeah, definitely.
And it worked.
So.
But again, it comes down to communication. So
I think trying different ways. Trying different ways
of
making the same point. Because sometimes someone may not hear it in the first way. They may not receive it.
Reiteration.
You may realize that. So, yeah.
Reiteration definitely would help a little bit as well.
I think so. Continuing to make the same point or, making your point in a different way,
Yes. That's always a good one. One thing I have noticed with you, and again, I love you to death. Love you to death. But sometimes I got to say the same thing 6 or 7 times for you to be like, fine, I get it. And then it's like, okay, you don't really get it because you said, fine, I get it. I know your tone. So then I got to try to figure out another way to give it across.
Yeah,
which sometimes I will say, and she has to do the same thing with me. It's, hey, I tried the nice way. Now I got to be a little bit more stern. Kyle, please take a step back and listen to what I'm saying.
Right.
But please, just real quick, try. Right, and she does the same thing with me, and that's one of the biggest things in our relationship.
Like
is
kind of being like, "Hey, listen,
a little bit more forceful."
I did the nice way, and I tried the nice way about 6 times, and we're past nice.
We're past nice.
Yeah,
exactly.
Kind of like when you tell your kids, like, "Hey, be careful," and then you have to be like,
"Be careful,
be careful, you're gonna get hurt." That kind of thing,
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely.
And it's fun. When you get through the tough times, it makes life just so much better because you learn from it. And, coming out of it, you don't really fight about it. Like, I remember when I lost my job, I guess it was a little over a year ago now, we were stressed because it came off all of a sudden. We go in and the boss man's like, hey, company meeting out back. I'm like, okay, first of all, really outside? Like, we're going to have this conversation outside? Like, I didn't know what was going on. Told us, hey, the restaurant's shutting down in a week. So this
2
is
weeks
your last
before
week.
Christmas.
Literally right before Christmas. Not even 2 weeks before Christmas.
We had just spent all of our savings on the kids' Christmas presents, too.
And I remember I called Kyle and I was like, hey, I don't know what to do here. Part of me wants to just up and leave as a, like, you're not going to get any, more sales out of me kind of deal. Like, I'm not going to help make you more money, but also at the same time, it's like, hey, it's Christmas. We need to make as much bread as we can because there's no telling when I'm going to get another job. It took 4 months and some change, about 4.5 months, for me to get back to work. So that was a really stressful time, but we had dealt with it before, and it was actually pretty easy navigating this time around. She kept me accountable, constantly applying for jobs. She's like, hey, this one popped up on my timeline. She was helping me look. It was, hey, do you ever think about maybe changing career paths? Do we do this? Do we do that? Where do we go from here? And it was like, okay, we spent all this money for Christmas, so we're budgeting. We budgeted hardcore, which was,
tough,
it was tough.
We made it through it.
It was nothing like before, so it made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, definitely. I think
a lot easier.
I think, taking those lessons that you learned before and trying to make sure that it's something that you can apply in a healthy way. Because it's easy when something like that happens where you've been through a stressful financial time and then you're going through another one to revert back to it. Like for me, I have a lot of anxiety about finances because of what we went through before, and it's easy for me to get mired in doing math too frequently or checking the bank account too often or, trying to cut too many corners that we don't need to cut as like a panic solution. And he keeps me accountable for that.
Bacardi, that cat is stressful.
Sorry, we had to make an edit here because Bacardi jumped behind the computer and we were worried she was going to get hurt and or break something.
Literally, that makes sense because I was wondering why the slider part for the top keeps falling off. I'm like, how does this happen? Like, you don't put your feet up on it, right?
No, not usually. Sometimes.
Okay, well, you need to stop doing that.
I know.
You definitely have to stop doing that.
I know. I could be better about that. I do.
Okay,
Sometimes.
well, I thought it would be her, and now that I'm realizing when you say, "Oh, I do it sometimes," that means you do it all the time.
Not all the time. It's been in like the last week that I've done it like 3 times. Yeah.
Okay, so that is you knocking the top off. Got it. Okay, at least I know. That's okay.
But yeah, so basically, I think we've kind of gotten to a point where we've covered most of that. I think it's really just trying to make sure you don't get sucked back into a bad headspace when you go through something more than once is like kind of the last takeaway that we have because it's easy to do.
It's easy to get sucked in that headspace. It's easy to be upset about it, and it's easy to take your frustration out in the wrong manner on your significant other, on your partner, on your teammate, right?
Right.
And that's easy to avoid the arguments, easy to avoid the stress if you just don't do it. And I know that's pretty much the gist of it.
But finding another outlet, if you need to get frustration out in another way, trying to find a healthy outlet to do that.
Oh yeah.
Whatever that is for you.
Hell, get angry together. Yeah. Let's go drive in traffic and yell at other drivers.
Maybe don't do that if you live in Central Florida because it's dangerous here. But
that was a joke.
Yeah.
But I will say, when I'm old and retired, I'm getting up during rush hour. I don't care, both ends of rush hour, and I'm going to drive in the fast lane like 45 miles under the speed limit.
I'll be at home sleeping. I ain't doing that.
Oh, I'm doing it.
You have fun.
Oh, I'm doing it. I was just like, hey, y'all made me late before. Now it's payback. Why? Because it builds character.
Fair enough.
So I won't make it very long.
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm trying to think. So what do we want to kind of tackle in our next episode?
I'm going to be honest with you. I have no idea. I think we need to leave this one up to chance.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see
what comes up in this next week in our lives that we can kind of touch on.
So we have no idea where next week is going, but we hope you're along for the ride. And
it might just be hey, we're going to vent kind of podcast.
Maybe so. We have no idea. I have a couple of things like in the back of my brain that we could pull from. But
really? You got stuff in the back of your brain? I can't see it. What?
Nothing.
Why was that funny? I was looking.
Oh, looking at the back of my brain?
Yeah, I can't see it.
Oh.
Why is that funny?
Waiting for you to start laughing.
I'm sorry.
Waiting for you to start laughing.
I was trying to be serious.
I know.
That was a dumb joke to make.
I know, but I was waiting because I knew you weren't going to be able to hold it together.
Speaking of dumb jokes, did I tell you the one about the bear who walked into the bar?
No.
So, bear walks into the bar, and the bartender goes, "Hey, what can I get you?" The bear. The bear orders a beer, but he says, "Yeah, you know what? I'll take a beer." Bartender says, "Hey, why the long pause?"
That's funny.
The bartender could have been a horse, and the bear could have asked, "Hey, why the long face?" But the horse was sitting down next to him and came in previous.
Oh, okay. Good
The
call.
horse sits down at the bar, says, "I need a beer." Bartender says, "Hey, why the long face?" No.
That's like a 5 out of 10. That's not that great.
No, that's not that great.
The bear joke was better.
Yeah. Fair enough. I'm sorry. Hey, what do you get when you cross Jack Frost with a shark?
I don't know what.
Frostbitten.
Oh boy.
I think she's over it.
we're at dad joke portion of the night.
Oh man. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening.
Thanks for listening.
We'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers.
Cheers.